So now you have your estate planning documents. What are you going to do with them? My name is Gregory Singleton. I'm an estate planning and probate attorney located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I work for Signature Law, which is an estate planning and probate law firm that serves the Twin Cities as well as greater Minnesota alike. Today we're going to talk about what to do with your estate planning documents now that you have them. If you like today's video, please be sure to like and subscribe below. It sure helps support the channel. So, where do we put our documents? Essentially, we're looking for three different things: a place that is accessible, safe, and findable. As before we get to what those locations are, I think there's an important thing to address first is what to put your documents in. And a lot of people take their estate planning documents, they stick them in an envelope, and then they throw them in wherever place they're going to put them. The problem with that is envelopes get lost. So the first thing I would say is make sure to put your estate planning documents in a binder. You're going to have a lot of them if it's done properly. You're going to have, so put dividers in your binders, and so you can have dividers for your will, the amendments to your will, the addendum to your will, the trust, the amendments to the trust, the documents funding the trust, your healthcare directive, your power of attorney, letters of estate, your contact information, your digital asset account information. All of that, each of those should have their own binders and be put, or dividers, and then put in the binder. So that leaves us the question of where do we put that binder? There's a lot of thought that goes into this by many people. So I'll run by you the most common places and the goods and pros and cons about each of those spots. The first place I hear people recommend putting their estate planning documents is the freezer. And the idea is that the freezer is fireproof and it's a safe place, and a lot of people say that paramedics know to look in the freezer for people's healthcare directives, so people will be able to find them. The problem with this is that's a little bit of a myth. First of all, freezers, at least modern day freezers, are not necessarily fireproof. Maybe the old ones are, but the freezers that most people have today are not. They may be fire resistant, so it might be a place that you put your stuff temporarily. The second myth is that paramedics really don't care about your healthcare directive. Their job is to get in there and get you out into the hospital as quick as possible and as safe as possible. They're not there to search for documents. So the other problem with the freezer is there's a lot of moisture in the freezer. You could just wrap your documents in plastic. That's a distinct possibility. But in the end, the freezer isn't the best place for your estate planning documents. The next most common place that people have for their estate planning documents is a file cabinet. On the plus side, file cabinets are easy to find, and that's where we expect to keep a lot of our safe documents, especially if it's a locking file cabinet. On the cons to this are file cabinets are not generally fireproof. Some of them are, but many of them are not. And to the contrary, they're filled with paper, which is essentially a bunch of tinder. So if you die in a house fire, your file cabinet all the documents in it are going to be destroyed. On the other hand, a file cabinet is a decent place to put a copy of all your documents because they'll be easy to find at some point. The next place that a lot of people store their estate planning documents is with their attorneys. Now, there are some good things about this. They are generally safe. An attorney will have a fireproof safe or some sort of fireproof storage where they can store your documents and not a lot of people will get to them, and they will be safe. There's a few problems with storing your documents with your attorney. The first one is, what if they go out of business? If they retire or go out of business or something along those lines, attorneys generally send their files to another attorney. So you may not know where your documents go. They should notify you, but they may not notify you, or you may miss the notification. Second of all, a lot of attorneys these days won't store hard copies of documents. They'll only store digital copies of documents. So if you need the original will, they're not going to have it, and they often will not store it anymore. The third problem is that once you die, most people won't know what attorney to go to look for your estate planning documents. You know your attorney, but most people don't walk around and tell everyone who their attorney is and where their estate planning documents are. Now, In Minnesota, we have a listserv for estate planners, and most attorneys that practice estate planning full-time or make it a major part of their practice are on the listserv. And what I will see on a regular basis is someone saying, hey, so-and-so died, does anyone have a copy of their will or their estate plan? And oftentimes people will respond and say, yep, I've got it, or I know where it's at. So in Minnesota, you do have a little bit of a fallback. However, I wouldn't rely on that because a lot of people won't know to go to an attorney and say, can you put this on the listserv? There's one other thing about attorneys having your estate planning documents of which you should be aware. And that is, I would say it's a little bit of an underhanded marketing scheme, and that's probate. A lot of attorneys believe or find that the real money is not in drafting the estate plan, but rather it's in doing the probate of the estate after the person's died. So as a disclaimer, I do estate planning and probate. I don't do this. A lot of attorneys, what they'll do is they'll do the estate plan as a loss leader and then store the estate plan until the person dies. And then when someone calls up and say, hey, do you have their estate planning documents? They say, sure, I've got them, and I'll do the probate. And a lot of times people will think, well, I guess they're going to do the probate, and there they go. They've got another client. I think it's a little underhanded. I don't know how many people do it, but it certainly is a practice that is prevalent among estate planning probate attorneys. The next thing you can do with your will, at least, not all your estate planning documents, but your will, is you can deposit it with the court. Why you'd want to do this, I'm not entirely certain. There's very few pros other than it would be safe and it's already with the court. The downside of this is that, first of all, once you put a will with the court and file it with the court while you're alive, your will becomes a public document and everyone can see it. And you may not want that. You may not care, but there's a possibility you may not want that. The second downside is that it's hard to change. You can change your will, certainly, but then you got to refile a new version with the court and get the old one destroyed and redacted and rescinded, and it becomes a bit more of a pain as opposed to finding another safe place to put it. The reality is that very few, if anybody, ever files their will with the court. So it's not a common practice. I wouldn't be surprised if some registrars don't even know what to do with a will once someone files it with the court while they're alive. The next place that you might want to put your estate planning documents is in a safety deposit box with a bank. On the plus side, they are safe. They're fireproof, and most people would think to go to a safety deposit box to try to find someone's estate planning documents. On the downside is people may not know where you bank at. They can probably figure it out by looking through your records and finding your bank statements, but off the top of their head, they're not going to know where to go. And if you put your healthcare directive there or power of attorney that you need quicker and more immediately, it may not be as easy to get to access quickly. Now, for your will, there is a procedure for accessing someone's safety deposit box when doing a will search. That is a legal process we have in Minnesota. It's kind of a pain, so I wouldn't really rely on that. The final place, and this is my favorite place to put estate planning documents, is in a fire safe. And they're safe, they're fireproof, they're accessible. You can have it in your home. On the downside is people need to be able to have the key or combination to the fire safe to get access to it, but that generally isn't a problem. And bringing in a drill to drill out a key lock is not necessarily impossible, or a locksmith can do that. But it is a safe, easy, accessible place that people will look to find your stuff, as long as you don't hide the fire safe somewhere that no one will be able to find it. Other places you may want to think about having some of your estate planning documents, specifically your healthcare directive, guardianship directive, and power of attorney. You might want to have a copy at work because that's where you spend a lot of time. And if you go to the hospital, you might want to be able to grab your healthcare directive. If you have a go bag for emergencies, where a grab and go bag in case you need to leave the house quickly, say if it's on fire, you might want to throw a copy in there. And the last place is you might want to throw a healthcare directive is with your family cabin, if you've got a place where you can keep emergency records up at the family cabin. Now, in an emergency, a court can use and can probate a photocopy of a will. It's not easy, they don't like doing it, and it is a process to go through. You'll probably have to have an attorney to do that, but it is a possibility. So if you do lose the original, you're not completely out of luck. A couple miscellaneous thoughts about this is you're going to want to have your estate plan documents in a few places. What I generally recommend to my clients is put it in a fire safe or a fireproof file cabinet, and I keep a digital copy. And I can't keep a hard copy, I wouldn't have enough space for that or storage for that, but I do keep a digital copy on a secured copy on the cloud for all my clients. So having it in multiple places, especially our healthcare directive, you're going to want to distribute that to certain people. Having it multiple places is a very smart strategy to have. Two tricks you might want to think of is one is I do this for all my healthcare directives. I have at the end a statement that says I have these estate planning documents: will, trust, power of attorney, and of course healthcare directive because it's in there. And it says, and these documents are held here, and it'll say they're stored in a fire safe in my house in my bedroom. I also put in there that a digital copy of these documents can be accessed by contacting Signature Law. So they're in the healthcare directive, which is usually the final document that people have while they're alive that's effective. You can find the rest of their estate planning documents, and this can be a very useful way to get access to everything. The second trick that you might want to think about, and I do this for all my clients, is I laminate a card that says, this is my name, I have these estate planning documents, healthcare directive, power of attorney, will, trust, guardianship directive, etc. To get a copy of them, please contact, and I put a name, usually their spouse or their healthcare agent or someone. And I also say you can access a copy by contacting Signature Law, and I put my, my contact information in there. So that if you get in a car accident somewhere, they will go through your wallet, they will find that card, and they will be able to contact and find a copy of your healthcare directive. The last thing to keep in mind is you're going to want to tell people where your estate planning documents are. If you keep it secret, then everyone's going to have a problem when they go to try to find them. So tell your spouse, tell whoever's going to be your personal representative, tell your healthcare agents where you're keeping these documents. And in the case of a healthcare agent, you probably want to distribute it to them anyways. There's going to be a whole nother video on distribution of documents. But in the end, tell people where stuff is. It shouldn't be a real secret. So that's what you do with the documents now that you have an estate plan. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please feel free to hit that like and subscribe button below. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll try to get to them. Otherwise, my name is Gregory Singleton from Signature Law, and until next time, have a wonderful day.